Welcome back to another math video here at Math Rocks with Mr. Cox. This video is all about probability. It'll contain questions like this. Last year, 65% of Americans had an iPhone and 42% had Verizon as their cell phone carrier. So we're going to be looking at two different ways to analyze the probabilities in a question like this. One way is called an area model and the other one is called a tree diagram. So if you stick around, you'll find out how they both work. With no further ado, let's get it on. The first method we're going to look at is called an area model, and you already know the question, and you'll see over here I have a box drawn and I have 4 different boxes within it, and you'll notice at the top we have iPhone question mark because what we know is Americans either had an iPhone or they didn't. Now they could have had lots of different models out there, whether it's a Google Pixel or a Samsung phone or whatever, but what we're going to do up here is we're going to put 0.65 for 65% yes. And then, of course, the no would be 100% minus 65, which is 35% or 0.35. And I'm going to go ahead and do these in decimals, a little bit easier on your calculator. Same thing for Verizon. We know yes is 42, and 100 minus 42 would be 58. So the no would be 58. So maybe they have something else like AT&T or T-Mobile, something along those lines. So how do we fill out these boxes here in the middle is actually quite simple. What you do is you take this box would be a combination of yes iPhone and yes Verizon. So we're going to take these two numbers and multiply them together. So on your calculator right now, you take 0.65 times 0.42. And I already went ahead and did that. And the answer for that is going to be 0.273 or 27.3%. So that would be the answer if we want to know what percent of people had an iPhone and Verizon. Over here, we're going to multiply 0.35 times 0.42. So if you grab your calculator and try that, you should get 0.147. And then we're going to keep going here. Down here would be 0.65 times 0.58. And you don't necessarily have to show your work all the time in here, but I'm just doing it now to show you what is actually happening on the calculator. When I did that, I got 0.377 or 37.7%. And then finally, down here, this would be the neither. If we want to know what percent didn't have an iPhone and also didn't have Verizon, that would be this box. And you do that by 0.35 times 0.58 on the calculator. And when I did this, my answer was 0.203, so about 20.3%. In later videos, we'll work a little bit more with this, but you kind of see the basic setup on how this works. One more thing is it possible to have more than 4 boxes? So maybe up here, maybe it's not an iPhone, but maybe it's either had an iPhone, had a Samsung phone, or something else. So you could actually end up having 3 different things along the top here, and you wind up having 6 boxes. So that is possible too. If you like what you've seen and heard so far, please like, comment, or subscribe. Thank you, and back to part 2. Now let's go ahead and see how tree diagrams work. This time I have a different question for you. It says at Anywhere High School, 82% of students have at least one sibling, while 37% have traveled abroad with their families in the past 5 years. So you'll notice it looks kind of like a tree, hence the name tree diagram. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the at least one sibling and deal with these first 2 branches first. So what we know is either you have at least one sibling, and by the way, we know the percentage for that, and that's going to be 82%. So I'm going to put 0.82 down here. So the opposite of at least one sibling is no siblings whatsoever. So I'm going to write no sibs here. And 100% minus 82% is 18%, so I'm going to put 0.18. All right, so that's our first 2 branches right here. Then our other characteristic here that we're going to be looking at is whether or not you've traveled abroad with your family in the past 5 years. And we know the answer is 37% have done so. So I'm going to say abroad, and we know that is 37%. So I'm going to go ahead and put that down there. And the reverse of traveling abroad is, oh, you haven't traveled abroad. So I'm just going to put not. And 100 minus 37 would be 63. So I'm going to put 0.63 over here. So that's where all these numbers come from. And then people often ask, well, what about these last two branches here? All it is an exact duplicate of what you see appear on these two branches. So I'm going to go and write abroad. And that's supposed to be an O right there, by the way. And I'm going to put 0.37. And then we have they didn't travel abroad. And that would be 0.63. All right, and then how do we finish this off here? What we do is we go ahead and I'm going to change colors here. I'm going to go to blue. We're going to take, if I want to know the answer up here, I'm going to take the branches that led us there. So it's going to be 0.82, that number, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to multiply it by 0.37. So grab your calculator, and if you did it correctly, you should get 0.3034, otherwise known as 30.34%. Likewise here, I'm going to take the original branch and this branch and multiply them together. So 0.82 times 0.63. And when you do that, you should get 0.5166. And down here, I'm going to take 0.18 times 0.37. And once again, you don't necessarily have to show your work like I've done right along here, but it's good to do that. That way you know where the numbers are all coming from. By the way, this is 0.0666, otherwise known as 6.66%. And then finally, our last one would be 0.18 times 0.63. And that would give us an answer of 0.1134. And what we can do with this, if I wanted to know the answer to both, what percent of people have at least one sibling and travel abroad, that would be the top one. If I want to know neither, you don't have any siblings and you have not traveled abroad, that would be 0.1134, and these would be one but not the other here in the middle. Most people honestly prefer the first type, the area model. The one good thing that tree diagrams are good for is what if these percentages were different depending on whether or not you had at least one sibling or not? Let's say that the traveling abroad all of a sudden went up a lot. Let's say now it was 52%. Then I could deal with it in a tree diagram. However, I couldn't do so if I was using an area model. All right, well, that's it. Hope you got a lot out of this video and hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching.